back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, so I'm here today to review 3 epic fantasy books that I recently read. 1 is a completion of a series and 2 are the start of a series. So let's start off with the beginnings. The first one of those that I read is The Vagrant by Peter Newman. This was my first Peter Newman book and it's the start of his debut series, so I wasn't really sure what to expect when I went into this. It's definitely a book that I've seen floating around, but I've seen really mixed opinions from most people on it, whether they liked it, whether they didn't, and it seems to be a bit of a polarising book. Some people seem to love it, they really think the atmosphere is great, other people just didn't get it. So, where did I fall on that picture? This story is the story of a vagrant. This character here is our vagrant, and he, as you may or may not be able to tell, is actually carrying a sword and a baby, and that is how the story begins. We see this character, this man, who is never really named other than the vagrant, and he is on a journey carrying a baby and a sword. The other thing to note is that he's actually a mute character. He does not speak throughout the entirety of the book, and so we are left a little bit in the dark about his motivations, at least to begin with. It seems like he is very competent. He manages to get through lots of situations that others may not be able to by just threatening people with looks or giving an expression, and I found that a really interesting quirk of this character. I did think that the lack of being able to speak made him much more interesting as a character and also made him think differently about how to approach situations. This is set in a world where there is a lot of darkness and a lot of bloodshed is going on. There is a lot of suppression of people and there's not really a nice part of it, but the north is said to be better. So he is headed that way. Along the way he meets quite a few different people who either hinder or help his quest, and we kind of follow him from there. Now, his blade is magical, and we get a little bit revealed about why and how and things like that as the story goes on. We also find out a bit about the other kind of evil factions who are working in the background. We do get their point of view, the sort of bad guy characters, a little bit, and we get to see some really weird, messed up creatures who can kind of put themselves into other bodies and things like that. So the creativity of this world and the atmosphere of this world is great. That is something I really, really enjoyed. I feel like Peter Newman has a great way with words, and he definitely kind of built up this very ethereal, very dark, creepy atmosphere, especially with the addition of this main character. We also have a bit of levity at times with the character of a goat who comes in a bit later on and is quite a staple for their gang. And we also have some people he meets along the way who do provide narration, which means it's not a completely silent book by any means. A lot of people he meets find themselves talking at him because he can't communicate with them, so they just babble away, which can be quite amusing at times. I definitely enjoyed this as a whole. I think it was a really interesting start to the series. It definitely seems like it's mostly set up, so there is a lot more to come as the series goes on. But for me personally, I found myself wishing it was all just explained a little bit more. And what I mean by that is I feel like there are a lot of unanswered questions that are opened up in this book, and we haven't really got that resolved by the end of the story. Presumably later on we get that, but at the moment as it stands we haven't really got any resolution, and I really wanted a little bit more of a resolution when I got to the end. However, with that said, I did really like the main character, and as a whole I think this is a really intriguing start. Will I continue on with the series? I'm not certain. I don't own the second book and I'm not 100% sure if I will pick it up or not, especially as I'm being really picky at the moment with what I do buy. But I am very intrigued, and I definitely think it's a series that might stay in the back of my mind and kind of niggle away there for a while. So we'll see. I'm not certain. I gave it 3 stars in the end. I think it's like a very middle of the road. I did like it more than I didn't, but I just felt a little bit unsatisfied at the end. So 3 stars from me. Do let me know in the comments if you've read this, what you thought, and especially if you've read this second one. Does it get better? Do you get answers to the questions? I would love to have your thoughts below. The next book I want to talk about is Kings of the Wyld, and this is by Nicholas Ames. I've heard so many good things about this book, and I was probably going into it with quite high expectations, even though I was trying not to. So for me, it possibly didn't quite live up to the hype. I tried not to give it too much hype, but so many of my friends loved this that I thought I was going to as well. I did really enjoy this. It follows a band of older heroes who have all retired. They've gone their separate ways. They used to be best friends. They used to know that they could count on one another through life and death because they would go into the wilds, which are these wild lands where beasts and monsters roam, and they would kill things and they would do errands, and they would just basically be really admired for their cunning and their bravery and their skill and their accidental completion of the tasks. They're quite a fun band of people and they really enjoy each other's company. They have a lot of charisma and they have a lot of fun when they're together, which means that when the story starts and they're all separated out, it's a little bit of a gloomy existence for each of them. They've kind of not really seen one another for a while and they're just plodding along through their lives. But then one of them turns up at the other's house and he says that his daughter, who is called Rose, has gone missing and she has actually walked into a war with her own band that she has formed. So together they get the gang back together and they all end up going to the place where Rose has gone to try and save her. However, along the way they meet all sorts of trouble and they have to survive somehow. And to be honest, they're quite a lucky bunch. They get through some scrapes that I definitely don't think in reality you could, but it's very entertaining to watch them. So what I liked about this is that it's a really fun group of people that we're following. We have a really old grumpy wizard who is quite bizarre and very charismatic and brings a lot of fun to the story. We have an old king who is trying to escape his marriage because he does not trust his wife, and in fact she does send assassins after them, so he's right not to trust her. We also have characters who are like the bad guys. We have other people from other bands who are trying to take the title that these guys used to have and be like the most renowned people in the world. So they're not really too happy about these guys coming back on the scene. And we have other mythical-ish creatures who get involved in trying to disrupt them and destroy them and so forth. So there is a lot going on in this book and it does have a lot of charm to it. The downside for me was that every woman in this book is a bad guy in some way, and there is literally nothing redeeming about nearly all of them. And I'm not a big fan of that. I really would have liked to see it a little bit more equal. Now, I do understand that this is a bit of a brotherly love story and that it's all about the guys getting back together, and there are lots of references in this to sort of D&D and things like that. For example, there are owl bears, which are apparently a D&D thing. I didn't know until someone told me, but apparently they're a thing and they're in here. So it is fun, it has a lot of references, and it definitely is the sort of book that I could see really appealing to guys who are into like roleplay and D&D and possibly dream of being washed up legends, who knows. But I do think it was a fun read all round. I just would have liked to see a little bit more depth on the characters and also some more women who were not all bad. That would be great. However, with that said, I've heard his second book, which is coming out this year and is one of my anticipated releases, is going to include a lot more women, and hopefully they will be good women and done really well, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes. So as a whole, I gave this a 3.5. It was definitely enjoyable, but it wasn't my top book of the year, unlike some people. I would be interested in your thoughts if you've heard of this one or if you've read it. Do let me know in the comments. The next and final book that I'm going to talk about in this video is the fourth and final one in a series, and that is the Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. This is called Wrath, and I actually audiobooked this one. I don't have a physical copy of it, which is weird because I thought I did, but I don't, so I need to buy one. This is a series which is very much good versus evil. However, there is lots of grey in the middle of that. What I mean by that is that we follow lots of different characters in a very expansive world. It's a largely classic fantasy and it's very, very spread out. So there are many different people to follow, many different chains and relationships to keep track of. Each of the chapters is quite short, so you do find that you are moving quite quickly through the plot and seeing lots and lots of different points of view. But at the centre of it all, we have the bright star and the black sun, and we have the god Azeroth, who is trying to come back, basically ruin the world. We have 7 treasures in this world, and if all of these treasures are united, then it is believed that Azeroth will be able to rip through to the Banished Lands and come and wreak havoc there. But we have the Bright Star, who is trying not to let this happen with the help of the Ben Elim and the giants of the world. And we have the Black Sun, who is basically enthralled by this god and other evil, nefarious forces around him, and he is trying to make sure that these treasures do get united. So it's quite an interesting story. It does have some really, really fun twists, especially in like the last few books. There were some twists that I never saw coming and played with your expectations, and I think this book to some extent does that as well. Some of my favourite characters from this story are the non-human characters. So there is actually a wolf who is called Storm, and she's incredibly loyal and incredibly dedicated to her sort of almost pack, I suppose, and I love her. And then there's also Craft, who is a crow, who is completely batty and funny and just really cynical, and I love that about that character as well. They both bring some really interesting moments of love and loyalty and also laughter, so I really, really like them. We then have Corbin and Nether, who are probably the two main characters. I won't say which one is the Black Sun or the Bright Star because that would ruin it, but they're definitely the main characters. We also have lots of peripheral characters who are basically there to flesh out the story, but they each have their own characterization, they each have their own personalities, and it feels like a very, very solid book as a whole. In general, I would highly recommend this series to anyone who likes classic fantasy, and I think that this conclusion was really very strong. A lot of the things that we've been opened up to, many of the questions we had over the course of the series are resolved in this book, and it feels like a very good ending to these characters and their situations and the world in general. So I really, really liked the ending, and I think it worked really well how everything kind of matched up and made sense and didn't leave you feeling like you needed more. However, there will be more because he is releasing another one in the same world, and I'm very excited about that. So I ended up giving Wrath a 4 out of 5 stars. I think it was a really solid continuation and end to the series, and I'm very much looking forward to reading A Time of Dread, his new one. It's going to be good, I think, and I'm definitely looking forward to that very, very soon. But I'd love to hear in the comments below what you guys think of these 3 books. Will you be picking any of them up, and whether you've already read them? Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video very soon. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.